Let me start by saying this is a particularly selfish episode for me. Yeah, I just said that. Selfish.
What did you say?
Okay. Let me take that back. I guess it's also generous. I know this topic is helpful. I know that a lot of you are looking for guidance and best practices on how to optimize your resume or your CV. I get a lot of people asking for my advice, for input and suggestions regarding their resume. I guess this isn't surprising though, based on the work that I do with clients on developing their personal brands. So, I keep getting the same resume questions from people, and I keep saying the same things over and over and over again. Recently, when I was talking with my friend, executive recruiter Sharon Mah-Gin, she shared a similar story with me. In her role as an executive recruiter who gets hired by firms to find the best people, she finds herself constantly being asked by individual executives for advice on their resume. So, Sharon and I decided to pull our expertise together, hers as an executive recruiter and mine as an executive communication coach, to help you with your resume. Welcome to Talk About Talk, episode number 146, Upgrade Your Resume. In this episode, you'll hear my interview with Sharon, and you're going to learn a lot, like common mistakes, do's and don'ts, and suggestions for formatting, content, and integrating your personal brand into your resume. Or is it your CV? And what's the difference anyway between a resume and a CV? Yeah, you're going to get an answer to that question too. Let's do this.
Let's do this. Let's talk about talk.
Greetings again, and welcome to Talk About Talk, episode number 146. Upgrade your resume with executive recruiter Sharon Mah-Gin. In case we haven't met, my name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki, and I'm your executive communication coach. Please call me Andrea. I'm the founder of Talk About Talk, where I coach communication skills to ambitious executives through one-on-one coaching, boot camps, and workshops. My objective is to help you improve your communication and your confidence and your clarity so you get noticed for the right reasons and your career takes off. Sound good? In this episode, you're going to learn a lot. Here's how it's going to go. I'm going to first introduce Sharon, and then we'll jump right into the interview. At the end, I'm going to recap, and I'm going to share with you the top 3 learnings. Yes, always the power of 3. You definitely do not need to take notes for this episode. Sharon and I work together to create a summary of suggestions for you that you can easily access. We call it our resume tip sheet. Just go to talkabouttalk.com/resume and you can download it there. This is a huge value for you. First, you can listen to the advice in this podcast episode, and then you print the tip sheet. It's basically a checklist to guide you through the process of upgrading your resume. Again, it's at talkabouttalk.com/resume. Yeah, I made it easy for you. So, as always, you don't need to take notes because we've done that for you. You're welcome. Just keep doing whatever you're doing, walking or driving or doing housework or sitting on the couch. By the way, if you are sitting on the couch, I hope you'll also watch Sharon and me on YouTube. Yes, I have a YouTube channel now. And I hope you'll check us out on the talkabouttalk.com website too. There are lots of resources there to help you out. If you're an individual executive, there's information about one-on-one coaching and boot camps. If you're a leader or an HR manager looking to boost the communication skills of your team, there's also information about workshops and keynotes. And there are free resources too, like the archive of this bi-weekly podcast and the free newsletter. I really hope you'll sign up for the Talk About Talk newsletter. That newsletter is your chance to get communication tips and coaching from me once a week. Okay, let me introduce my friend Sharon Mah-Gin. I've known Sharon for years and years. She's a successful recruiter, and she's a very generous human. This is the 4th time that Sharon has shared her expertise with us. Previously, she shared her expertise on episodes focused on networking skills, networking online, and communication skills for job seekers. Sharon and I have also collaborated on workshops together, typically focused on topics including personal branding and networking. She is a master networker. Actually, I would characterize her as a master connector. and she's generous. And she's outgoing, as you'll hear. Sharon's been active in executive search for over 25 years. She started as a client partner in the Toronto office of Korn Ferry International, the world's largest publicly traded executive search firm. While Sharon has successfully completed engagements in all functional areas, including sales, marketing, operations, human resources, and general management, her designation as a CA or chartered accountant has led her to developing an expertise in financial roles. Sharon earned her Bachelor of Commerce degree from Queen's University, and she articled at EY, where she performed audits for large clients in major industries, including manufacturing, utilities, and mining. Prior to joining Korn Ferry, she was also a director of internal audit at a major North American real estate developer and an internal audit manager with a major Canadian retailer. She also served as assistant controller at another real estate developer. As I said, Sharon has a lot of energy. Outside of her role as a successful recruiter, Sharon served on the Global Asian Advisory Board for PepsiCo, and her past board roles include Bio CEO and Youth Science Ontario. She's currently helping with the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Awards program, and she serves on the founding committee of Women in Life Sciences. And I know that she also recently completed hiking 900 kilometers of the Bruce Trail. Yes, 900 kilometers. Congratulations, Sharon. Thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us here today to provide your resume advice.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm just going to start by saying, fantastic outfit. We look like twins.
Well, I knew it was one of your favorite colors, and you're all about personal branding. So I thought I'd get a good laugh out of you if I dressed sort of in your favorite color. I didn't realize you were going to do the same thing. So there we go.
Yeah, that's funny. I love your big lapels. So for those of you who are listening and not watching us on YouTube, we are basically wearing identical bright turquoise blazers. Amazing. All right. I've got a question to start off with here to kick us off. What is the difference between a resume and a CV, or is there a difference?
Great question. I don't really feel there's a difference. I find resume, probably more junior people will refer to it that way. But with the CV, I find executives refer to it, but it really is the same thing, which is a summary of your experience, your skills, key accomplishments.
Okay. So this is an important document. Clearly, we're dedicating an episode to this. What are the most common mistakes that you see with your clients or people that are seeking advice from you in terms of their resume or their CV?
Well, I think the number one thing that I see is some of them read like a job description. And what I really need is I'm looking at the key accomplishments, because at the end of the day, companies hire you for three things. They hire you because you can help them make money, save money, or help solve an issue. So I would say the number one thing is where I need a sense of the scope in terms of the responsibility, but they're really missing the key accomplishments. And sometimes they're just too wordy. And the third piece would be they're not easy to read. Like there's just too much words. Okay. I prefer the bullet point.
Okay, so let's unpack each of those three, because I think those are really critical. I made this comment recently in an episode where I was saying sometimes if you're seeking advice, the things that they tell you should do, you should pay less attention to, and the things that people tell you should not do, or the mistakes to avoid, are actually the most important and most relevant advice for most people. I think this is beautiful advice. Someone shared this with me when I was looking for advice on teaching, like performing in the classroom. And this amazing teacher at Harvard Business School said, listen carefully to what the best teachers tell you about what you should not do. So the first thing you said is, and I love this line, Sharon, include the accomplishments. It's what, can you say it again? What?
Yes. List your key accomplishments. Because at the end of the day, people hire you for three things. You're going to help them make money, save money, or help solve a problem. So, when people just basically rate their job description, what they're responsible for, I mean, say it's a CFO. I know that's what a CFO does. What I want to know is, what did you accomplish? Mm-hmm. And so I often say on the resume, go so what after every key bullet point, to finish off how that impacts making money, saving money, or help solving a problem.
So I just want to underscore this. So first of all, amazing use of the power of three, Sharon.
Thank
This
you.
is
Another one of your great podcasts, by the way.
that is my favorite episode, 93, the power of three. We had a lot of fun with that episode. So, but there are three things. So ask yourself, so what? That's huge after every line. And if you've already answered the so what, great, move on. And otherwise you need to add something, right? And the thing is probably how you made money, saved money, or solved a problem for the organization. Another way of thinking about that I was just reading up on advice for resumes and CVs, it was focus on achievements, not on tasks, right? So that's saying the same thing in another way. It's not that you are describing your job description, it's what did you achieve, right? Love that. Okay. We could just end there. That's really...
Yeah, you could actually. If you could do that, if you did that, and you also for your companies, if they're not tier one companies, just add a sense. Like if they're companies that no one's heard of, tell me if they're public or private.
Right.
Tell me about how many employees, how much in revenues. Because believe me, I am not going to Google that company to figure out, where you worked. So that if you did both those things, that's pretty all you need to do.
Yeah, we're starting with the big stuff here. So this relates to something that you mentioned in a previous interview that we did where you said, make it easy for the other person. They should not have to Google the organization, right? For example.
Right.
Beautiful.
Make it easy. People generally want to help you. So if you're looking for a job or you want a job, make it easy for people to understand your background.
Right.
I come at this from, over 30 years experience. I've looked at thousands of CVs/resumes. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand your background. So make it easy for me to understand it.
So the second mistake that you brought up was that people make their resume or CV too long. What is the ideal length?
I would say ideally 2 pages, but I would also tell people, please don't get hung up on it. Like, in other words, whether it's 2 or 3 pages, it takes 3 pages so that I can clearly and simply understand your background. Take it to the 3 pages, right? Like, if you know what I'm saying, like, it depends on where you're at in your career. If you've got lots of key accomplishments and I go back to the personal branding, but it makes it positive, relevant, and unique in terms of who you are. We really don't get hung up on the 2 or 3. Sometimes the 1 page for an executive is probably too short. That's probably more of a board bio.
Yeah.
Whereas for an executive, 2 pages, 2 to 3 is normal. Anything more than 3, you're probably getting too wordy, or you can cut out some of your earlier jobs.
Okay. That's interesting. I've heard 2 pages, 2 pages, 2 pages, 2 pages, since forever. Unless you're very junior, right? Like, my son is a 3rd-year college student, so he should really have a 1-pager, not a 2-pager.
Correct.
It makes sense as you've had more experience that it would take more lines just even to list your job experience, right?
Correct.
But, and you mentioned maybe a board CV would be 1 page, which leads me to think about sort of customizing based on your industry. So in academia, where you're listing all of your publications, like I've seen resumes that are over 10 pages.
I've seen them at 30 with the PhDs. Absolutely 30 with all the publications.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the answer is 2 is probably ideal, 3 if necessary, 1 if you're junior, and then consider your industry. Is that what you'd say?
Correct.
One other quick question. You and I were working with someone who shared a 1-page, very succinct CV, right? And at the bottom it said, more details available upon request, or an extended version, basically, right? And then this executive had, I think it was like a 5-page version. Yeah. What do you think about that? As a recruiter?
More details to follow. That's dated. That was the old days. It's like references available upon request. Those are the old days. You don't need to do that. You should be able to, especially if you're an executive. And if you can't get there to 2 or 3 pages, you need to hire Andrea, because then you're not communicating, concisely and tightly, because really you should be able to get there.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting question. This is something else that I was reading about, was sometimes, this is like hard for me to imagine, but you just gave a great example. Sometimes there are signals that you can have written on this piece of paper, the digital or hard copy piece of paper, right? That signal that you're old or dated or out of touch, not even necessarily old, right?
Right.
For example, references available upon request,
Yes.
get rid of it.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of other things. So the other one that I always find fascinating is, and I'm not going to name the platforms, but there are some email platforms that people started using 20 years ago or more, where those platforms barely ever exist. And the only people I know that use those platforms are all, let's say over 60. It's not a good look if you want to show yourself as, and I'm not being ageist here. I'm just saying if you want to show that you're up to speed in terms of technology and platforms, which is probably something that all leaders and executives want, you want to minimize those signals. So what else? So
well, you're right. So if you have a Hotmail account,
yeah,
not so great. you should be, a Gmail account. Put your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like in there, right? Like those bring you up to date very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can tell it's the Hotmail account. And then usually if there's no years of graduation, it's usually another sign. I'll be honest. You can just tell when you look at how many years experience, or you look at where the jobs are, or if they say, I can usually figure it out. There's no years on graduation. And then it says prior experience includes this, and this. There's no dates. And the irony is, as I say to a lot of people, is that at the end of the day, companies hire you because you can help them make money. I'm going to say this again: make money, save money, or help solve an issue. I've done lots of different searches. I've put people into CEO roles in their 60s because, again, you tie it to culture. In that case, they needed the seasoning and the maturity. I've had one executive where he kept saying, I'm very active. I'm very active. And I had to put my pen down and said, please stop this. You're obviously hung up on your age, and you wouldn't be here if I felt that was an issue. My clients don't care. I don't care. I just want to know that this person is going to be a great cultural fit first, and then they have the skills to help them make money, save money, help solve an issue.
Beautifully put, Sharon. So I did get this question, maybe I think it was last week when I did an open Q&A on personal branding on LinkedIn, and somebody asked me that very question. He is in his 60s. He is retired from, I think, the US military. He is very active, and he said, my resume screams old guy. How do I change this in terms of my personal brand? So you're saying don't worry about the years?
Well, what I'm saying is, I hope he has a Gmail account. Put in the LinkedIn, do not have references available upon request or details.
Yeah.
And then what I'm sort of saying is, no, in this case, you can leave out the years, and then you can just say, you could say just prior experiences, whatever. Yeah. But then your last 10 or 15 years is what most people care about, frankly, anyways. And so what you really want to shine there is key accomplishments. So I don't know what his resume looks like, but if there's some really relevant key accomplishments that can tie into the company in terms of helping them make money, save money, or help solve an issue, that would be fantastic. Like the gentleman that I placed that was in the 60s for a CEO role, I needed it. It's a family-run business, you know what I mean? And I needed someone to help them pivot from a family-run business to translating, to moving them to the new era. Yep. And so we have a 5-year contract. You know what I mean? And he will exit, you know what I mean, and bring in his successor when they're ready more for that active change. Whereas if I brought in someone who was probably in their 40s or 50s, it probably would have been too much change for the organization.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's inspiring for folks that are, we're all getting older. So if you're not there yet, this is still advice that you should be heeding.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last year, I've done 2 CEO searches, and both gentlemen were in their 60s.
Okay. So you talked about sharing. Let's get on into the formatting. The 3 things that you said were the biggest mistakes, again, were number 1, not focusing enough on accomplishments, achievements, how you save money, make money, or solve a problem. Number 2 was too long. Right. And I think you said number 3 was the format.
Yes, the format.
So and you just touched on there should be more detail on the most recent roles that you had.
Correct.
And again, pulling out the ways that you made money, saved money, and solved a problem. So beyond that, in terms of formatting, can you get into some of the things that you've seen that work really well or don't work really well in terms of format?
Sure. I mean, the number one pet peeve I have is I don't like functional resumes.
Okay.
I prefer chronological.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is I have to sit there and try to match your key accomplishments to various jobs. You're making me work too hard.
Right.
So I am a big fan of chronological resumes. Look, in executive search, we spend less than a minute on a resume. We start, where did you get your education? Yes. That seems like natural progression. Okay, now the last 10, 15 years in this role as CEOs, what did they accomplish, right? So when you have functional, I'm trying to figure out which company, because some of these companies, it's relevant for me what you did at those companies, and you're making me work too hard to figure that out. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing is bullet points, right? I don't want a whole bunch of words. Keep it tight, keep it concise, right? Bullet points, Andrea, I'm sure you're supportive of this, are easier on the eye to read, right?
Yep.
So those would be some things. And that's what I mean about formatting. Key thing, make it easy for people to understand your background.
Right.
So if it's a no-name company, please put down private, public, family-owned, sense of revenue, number of employees. So I have a sense of scope of responsibility. You might want to say reporting into, like I had a person who's a CFO, and it turns out he's the most senior person here in Canada. I didn't realize that. And I said, well, you should say that. He's reporting to a global head. So, well, then that's a game changer. You know what I mean? You're the most senior. So if that's relevant, reporting into, then what is it about leadership? It's about people. So why would you not put something about, direct reports of X number with a total team of whatever? And then in the so what, it would be coached and developed 3 of them who are now in leadership roles. Because as you advance in your career as an executive, number one, it's all about people leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't get your people aligned, you can't create that vision and get them aligned, you're not going to be successful. Yeah. So I've had resumes where there's not one comment about people leadership.
Right. Yeah. You and I have worked with some folks where on their personal brand or their professional identity, nowhere do they talk about leadership. I said the word lead, leader, or led doesn't show up anywhere. Are you not a leader? Oh, remember we were coaching one gentleman who was he was looking for a job in sales, and he was a great guy. Worked he's a successful salesperson. Sales wasn't on his CV. Do you remember?
Exactly. I sent him to your boot camp big time, Andrea. I spoke with him one-on-one, and then he's 20 minutes telling me he was a salesperson. And then I paused him and I said, okay, you've told me for 20 minutes you're a salesperson, and the word sales is not anywhere on your resume or LinkedIn. He looked down and he said, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? And I said, you will never be found. So, I mean, he was a job seeker. And I said, the key word, in any search, whether it be internal recruiting, external recruiting, is you're going to put in sales. You'll never show up in any search.
Yeah. So let's digress a little bit from, I want to talk about format more, but you said keywords.
Yes.
This is key.
No pun intended.
So, I'm going to just say, as a marketer, I've worked in marketing. I have a degree in marketing. Using keywords used to be like, oh, you're just, you're keyword stuffing. It's like, well, no, I'm making sure that I am discoverable by the algorithm. Beautiful coffee cup, Sharon. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I want that cup. She has a turquoise coffee cup. We want to make ourselves discoverable. So don't think of it as the terms that you're using need to be the terms that someone will be seeking or I guess entering right into LinkedIn, for example. And then even just generally, when someone skims it, they should be seeing the words that are relevant to what you're looking for. Of course, they need to be true, right? So
yes, of course.
This is,
absolutely. You do keywords like sales. Of course, one of your keywords is going to be sales. The other thing is that's where everybody goes, is LinkedIn now, right? That's the first place they go. So if you want, create your personal brand or you're seeking a job, don't just chronologically list your jobs. I've seen a few profiles. So the first thing I do if someone's interested in a role or whatever, I'll go look at their LinkedIn. And, hopefully it's robust because I don't have a resume yet at this point. But I'm shocked at the number of people who all they do is just list their jobs and their key skills. There's no key accomplishments there.
So what is the difference between what you would put in a CV versus on a LinkedIn profile?
Great question, Andrea. I get it all the time. A resume is more formal. That's the way I like to think of it. It's more formal. It's more that, listing of your job. It's more objective. Whereas in a LinkedIn profile, you can let a little bit more of your personality shine. Like, in the about section, you can be more, I this, or I love doing this. So you let a little bit more of your personality. It's a little bit less formal, more casual.
So, okay, that's a great answer because a lot of people I noticed in their about section, it's kind of the tip off, right? You read the about section and it's written like a formal corporate biography. What it really should be is if you were given the microphone and asked to introduce yourself, in say a corporate networking event, what would you say? So it's like more than you probably would say if you were really in that scenario, because you've got many, many, many words you can fill that whole section in. What would you say? So you're still professional, but you're more personal than you would be if it was a formal job interview. Love it. That's a
bingo. Absolutely, Andrea. And that's what I look for. I can get a sense. And again, please use bullet points. Like, don't send me a whole bunch of words. Like, it should be tight. Sometimes people write a whole story. It's too much. It's too bullet points.
So back to the format. So at the top of a LinkedIn profile, as you know, we have the headline, which is around 220-ish characters. And a lot of people just put their title and their firm, and you can put, your leadership style. You could put, like, if you have a mantra, you could put your personality, your values, your strengths, your expertise, your industry, your function. I could go on and on, right?
That's correct.
So that's for LinkedIn. At the top of a lot of people's resume or CV, they also have a summary section. Do you have some suggestions for formatting that?
Absolutely. That is worthwhile, but usually I say it's almost like your elevator pitch / your headline, right? Mm-hmm. You don't spend a lot of time on it in terms of lots of words and stuff like that, but it is say, like, the way I say it's almost like your elevator pitch. Seasoned, finance leader with over 25 years experience in M&A, capital raising, dealing with analysts. Led teams of, direct reports of 3 to 10, teams of 20 to 30. Mm-hmm. And then, like, something along that line. Like, it's basically like your elevator pitch in terms of, and then out of that, I should be able to pull a headline. So, you might want to put in the word global, right? Global, I cannot believe the number of people who have global experience and don't put that in, because in Canada, you don't get a lot of people with global experience.
Right.
So I will always usually be editing people. Actually, when I'm doing interviews, I end up coaching now at the same time. I can't help myself, to be honest. And I go, I'm so sorry. I know we're interviewing, but I can't help. But even if it's not this role, but for future, I need to tell you this, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're missing this word, or you should be saying this, right? So I guess with me, they're getting double value.
You're too generous, Sharon. You really are. I'm glad that we're doing this interview now, because then you can just send them this podcast episode. So this point that, a lot of people don't have the word leader, for example, in their summary section at the top, or even mention, as we said, for this sales manager that you and I were talking about, they don't even have their industry or their functional expertise. The word global. Are there any other words that folks are that recruiters or hiring managers are looking for that are sometimes missing that you can think of?
The people leadership side would be another key area. Like, I'm shocked, like, at how many people won't talk about that. And that's what leadership is all about. That's
right.
Key. That's, like 101 leadership. So I'm shocked at that.
Yeah.
If you have a different language, like if you're bilingual, please. I've had people, I said, why don't you start with bilingual? That's unique. Like, I get to go back to one of your best podcasts, Andrea, which is your personal branding. Like, what makes you positive, relevant, and unique, right? So when I've called people out on that, I said, "You've got global experience. You're bilingual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You like it's like you've got startup and corporate experience, right?
Yeah.
You've done M&A. You've done capital raising. Those are skills now, right?"
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you've really answered the question already about how to incorporate your personal brand in. So it's asking yourself beyond the save money, make money, or solve a problem, right? Beyond the so what, going beyond tasks to achievements and accomplishments. That's a big part of it. But then in terms of incorporating your personal brand, it's making sure everything that you want to share that's positive, unique, and relevant is clear in the summary and then woven throughout in the other sections.
Correct.
What about in terms of formatting? So I just read an article that said that more contemporary resumes are now, the format is including not just different fonts and different, words or ways of listing things or categorizing the information, but they're using, for example, color, logos, and images. Have you seen
No,
that?
I
I
have.
haven't seen that.
I have, but it's usually people who are more creative, like it's like especially marketing people.
Okay.
Okay, like architect types, marketing types. I've seen that, right?
Okay.
But they add no value for me in terms of my roles that are
Yeah.
C-level, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't. If anything, it just crowds out the resume.
Yeah. Interesting. So that reminds me, I recently updated my one-page personal branding template, and I put logos in. So I put the Talk About Talk logo, I put the Harvard Business School logo, I put the Inc. magazine logo, and I was sharing it with a client, and they said, "Well, that makes sense because you're in marketing and branding, and these are the brands." And I was like, "True." So
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
I
that's
guess
where I see it.
this goes back to the point of customizing it for the industry that you're in, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just like you were saying earlier, the PhD resumes, there's 30 pages. I guess 30 pages sometimes, 25 easily.
Yeah.
But I get that because it's just what they do. It's more academia.
So what are the main
publications? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. What are the main sections? Just last question, I guess, on formatting. The section. So you have the summary section, and then you have your work experience in chronological order, reverse chronological, right? So with the most recent first, with more detail, less detail on your older experience. What else? What are the other main sections that you see in the
education? Education, obviously, and professional development, but only if it's unique. Okay, like and in terms of hobbies, that's another section we should cover. In terms of hobbies, unless it's really unique, I don't need to know that you garden, like you run. Like if you want to tell me that you ran a marathon, if you want to tell me you're an Ironman, maybe you mention that, right? But if it's again really positive, relevant, and unique, I don't really need motherhood stuff. Like it's what I want to say.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So I read that when people share personal information, for example, in a corporate biography, that it makes people like them more because they are more interesting and they're more quote unquote human, right? And so therefore you might think in on your resume, you might want to include personal endeavors or achievements or whatever.
But not-for-profit boards, like that's sometimes nice to see, right? But I mean, I've had some resumes say happily married with 4 children, and I go, okay, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with that. That was sort of a bit unusual.
I think that is a very good point. So don't put personal things in for the sake of putting a personal facts in. If there is something that stands out, right? Where you stand out, where it's positive, unique, and somehow relevant. I've got a great example. This was someone, a mutual friend of ours, Sharon, who in the second coaching session I did with him, he told me that he goes, "Sorry, I'm a mess. I just got back from a run." I said, "Oh, you run?" He said, "Oh, I run every day. In fact, I run ultra marathons." And I said, "How is this just coming up right now? You run ultra marathons?" And he said, "Yeah, we ended up putting avid runner in his LinkedIn profile as like the last point." And I said, if someone says to you, "What's this avid runner thing?" and you say, "I run ultra marathons," I said, I'm automatically thinking, wow, he's ambitious and he's disciplined right away. So it's
me
positive.
Too. Yeah. But then I would say, Andrea, I would have had him put avid runner, or I would have just had in brackets ultra marathons, or I would just have had him run ultra marathons.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like in other words, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Avid runner is the motherhood. It's a generic statement. right? Running ultra marathons, positive, relevant, and unique.
Yeah,
That's a
that's true.
wow.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would have had him don't even put avid runner. Just
His
right.
banner image was a picture of him at the starting line for a marathon, and you could see that it was, for a marathon. Anyway, yeah.
Ultra marathons takes it to a next level, Andrea,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
I know.
I'm an ex-runner myself of half marathons and ran one marathon in my
Yeah.
life, but
Yeah.
ultra is I would actually just get him to change it and just go run ultra marathons, because
Yeah.
that takes him to a whole new level, like an Ironman, right?
Yeah. So you're reminding me, on my LinkedIn and CV, I have black belt in Taekwondo, which is not that common, right? So it is unique, and people are.
Yeah,
and I know
exactly.
when people have introduced me, when I'm doing a speaking engagement, for example, or running a workshop, they'll say, "And she has a black," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." So
well, Andrea, I just finished, as you know, on October 20th, I just finished walking or hiking the 910 kilometers of the Bruce Trail, and from Niagara Falls to Tobermory, and there's only 4,000 something people who have done it since in the 55 years the trail's been around. So I just accomplished that goal. So I'm really proud of that.
You should be. That needs to go on your LinkedIn and on your CV, Sharon.
Oh yes, that's right. Except I'm not looking for a job.
No, I know.
Helping people find a job, but yes. Yeah, you're right. I should update it. Thank you so much. That's a great reminder.
So 2 questions before we get to the 3 rapid fire questions. The first one is, if you were starting from scratch, okay, from a blank sheet of paper, and say you were like a new partner or someone who's seeking board positions, right? And you're like, I'm just going to start from scratch and use best practices. What would you do in terms of starting to create your resume? Would you start with a template? Would you just start listing things? What would you do?
Great question. I start with the template because there's so many out there, right? That template is going to be, you're going to do your resume chronological. You're going to have a summary. You're going to have a Gmail account and your LinkedIn, and ideally sometimes your city even, so people know, although nowadays, no, I think with senior executives, you should still have your city and where you're from. And then you're going to do key accomplishments, in terms of, you're going to look at each company. If it's not a tier 1 company, you're going to give me a sense of what they are, so I don't have to Google it. And so that and then you're going to have your education section, and then you're going to have your section in terms of, unique hobbies, or maybe like things that you might be passionate about. You might be really passionate about mental health, and you've taken on a row, and that should be it. So that if I start at the bottom, I can go, that's an interesting. Wow, he's an ultra marathoner. That's interesting. You're right. Disciplined, focused, and obviously a high achiever. And then where did they go to school? Okay, they started off in they did their CPA, at one of the big 5 firms, and then they went in controller, whatever. Now they're a CFO. Okay, now the last 10 years, these are CFO searches. They've raised capital, they've dealt with analysts, et cetera. They've had people leadership, and it's all sort of key accomplishments where they might have done some ERP implementation, saving money. They might have done capital raising, helping make money.
Yeah.
And then your elevator pitch would be that
quantified. So start at the bottom. I like that. That's interesting advice too. When you're creating it. If you feel overwhelmed about creating your summary, do that last. Work your way up to it.
Exactly.
All right.
And then you'll get into the flow. Then you'll get into the flow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I do when I do a podcast. I don't write the description of the podcast first. I think about what I want the learnings to be, right? And then I create the outline. And then I do the description last. So it's kind of the same idea. Okay. Last question is, what about a cover letter? So I was thinking about how we used to, have our CV or resume, and then we took all this time crafting on this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I guess I'm really asking 2 questions here. So one is about, do people have hard copy CVs or resumes anymore, or is it all just an electronic or a digital document? And what about the cover letter? Even if it's digital, are you actually including a letter as part of your CV, or is that just the email that you're attaching your CV to? How does that work?
Great question.
Yeah.
And again, times have changed. So the resume, basically everybody's got on digital. Like very few people do the hard copy now. I mean, it's just so easily accessible, right?
Yeah.
And so digital for sure. Number two, the cover letter. It seems so weird, right? That's I don't think you even call it a cover letter anymore. I think you call it like an elevator pitch or whatever.
Yeah.
So you know this, Andrea, from some of the other tips. Never include your cover letter as an attachment.
Right.
Why? Because everybody reads everything on their smartphone. It is a pain in the butt for me to sit there and open up that document and then open up your resume. So always send it in the body of an email.
Yes.
And that cover letter should be, why are you positive, relevant, and unique for the role? Or Andrea, I go back to one of your Harvard published how to introduce yourself, right? The present, the past, and the future, right? So you should have enough information in that elevator pitch that I don't need to go to your resume unless I need further detail.
Right.
In other words, if you're a seasoned marketing person, salesperson, I should be able to pick it up right from that piece. And I only use your resume as backup or further detail. So if you haven't listened to Andrea's podcast on how to introduce yourself, which by the way, it was Harvard published, it's a great way to start, right?
Yes.
The present, the past, and the future. And then the other thing is I'll end with this, the most expensive piece of real estate in your subject line of your email. Please don't send me things looking for a job or help or that is such a waste. That should be a reflection of your headline. So why? Because everybody reads the subject line on their emails. So if it's like, Dr. Andrea Wojcinski, you know what I mean? Communications PhD, communications expert, personal branding. That's your headline, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you're looking for a job, your name, global CFO, capital raising, M&A, looking for next role. Make it easy for people so that when that role comes up, people think of you. It's the same thing underneath your LinkedIn, under your headline. Keep repeating that. What is your headline that makes you positive, relevant, and unique? That's what I'll end with.
Beautiful, Sharon. Oh my goodness. I never thought of using the 3-point self-introduction framework in terms of your cover letter or the email. That is a fantastic use for that framework. Beautiful. All right, I'm going to ask you the I changed it to 3, power of 3, the 3 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Question
number 1. What are your communication pet peeves? What communication related things bug you?
Okay, we've talked about it already, but if I just do this rapid fire, the first thing that comes to mind is I have to work really hard to understand your background because your resume is too wordy, there isn't bullet points, and there's no key accomplishments.
Yeah, I love it. It's disrespectful to not make things easy for other people, isn't it?
Correct, it is. Yeah. It is. Like, I don't know who this company is. Yeah. I have no sense of who they are, what they are, and you expect me to go Google it? I won't be doing that.
Yeah. You just lost that job.
Yes.
Okay. That's a fantastic one. Second rapid fire question. Introvert or extrovert?
Should we take a vote, Andrea? As an extrovert plus like you, I get my energy from people. If I don't see people for a while, it's hard on me. So absolutely extrovert.
Yeah. Sharon is off the charts. She is an off the charts extrovert. It comes through in your voice too. All right. The third rapid fire question, Sharon, is do you have any general communication advice for middle and senior level executives, just in terms of how they can elevate their communication?
Great question. I mean, my first thing is, we talked about it earlier, is make it easy for people to understand your background and be respectful of people's time. So, I mean, we talked about how summarizing at the top, doing a chronological resume, using bullet points. If the company's not a tier 1 company, do a quick one-liner, private, family-owned, revenue, number of employees, have the education section. And if you have a unique hobby, you're an ultra marathoner, et cetera, et cetera, include that. And if you're passionate about certain causes, you can include that to make it a little bit personable. But the bottom line is just be respectful of people's time and also make it really simple and easy for people to understand. And even if you're a rock star CEO, it doesn't mean that, people are going to quickly understand your background, et cetera. You've got to really make it simple.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing all of the advice that you have in this interview focused on optimizing your CV and your resume. Thank you.
Right. And thank you, Andrea, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Isn't Sharon fantastic? Thank you again so much, Sharon. And congratulations again on completing the Bruce Trail 900-kilometer hike. If you want to hear more from Sharon, you can check out Talk About Talk episode 45 on networking, episode 67 on online networking, and episode 107 on communication skills for job seekers. I do not expect you to memorize that, by the way. Of course, you can always check out the show notes to find those episodes, or go to the talkabouttalk.com website. And while you're there, don't forget, download the free resume tip sheet that we created for you. It's a succinct summary of everything we covered in this episode. Just go to talkabouttalk.com/resume. Now, if I had to choose 3 things that I hope you'll focus on from this episode, here's what they are. Number 1, make it easy. This is a great point that Sharon made. You do the work, not the other person. Make it easy for them. For example, make your resume chronological, not functional. Make it easy to track. Also, lists, not paragraphs. And no extra attachments or unnecessary clicks. Use the body of your email as your cover letter. And if your experience includes a firm that people might not be familiar with, briefly describe it. You get the idea. Don't assume that they're going to go to extra effort. Make it easy for them. So that's the first point. Make it as easy as possible for the reader. Point number 2, focus on your impact and achievements. As Sharon said again and again, focus on how you made money, saved money, or solved a problem. We are less interested in your job description and more interested in your quantifiable achievements. Got it? So, the first one is make it easy. The second one is focused on your impact, not on your job description. The third key point is to integrate your personal brand. Ask yourself, what are the unique things about you that you want the reader and ultimately the interviewer to know about you? Then, make sure these things are clearly and consistently communicated in your resume. Of course, this means using keywords that might apply to you, such as your industry or your expertise, or perhaps words like leader or global. It also means summarizing your main points of differentiation at the top of your resume. Again, your industry or functional expertise, but also your leadership style and significant awards and milestones. And you can even integrate your personal brand into your resume with formatting. Things like colors and fonts and formatting all implicitly communicate something about you. Now, of course, I want to remind you that our resume tip sheet provides much more detailed suggestions, but these are 3 things that I hope you'll focus on as you upgrade your CV. Number 1, make it easy for the reader. Number 2, focus on impact and achievements. And number 3, integrate your personal brand. Again, please go to talkabouttalk.com/resume to download your free resume tip sheet. You can use it as a checklist as you upgrade your resume and upgrade your career. Well, I certainly hope this was helpful for you. Thank you for listening, and talk soon.